Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, the podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. Once again, we are joined by our crack legislative team, Jimmy Johnson, Deena Bosworth. Guys, how we doing?
Good.
Fantastic.
Deena?
I'm great. A little stuffy.
Sound great. We'll see if we can get through this. But thanks for joining us. Hope everyone enjoyed their weekend, last college basketball regular season weekend. We now move into the playoffs, and hopefully everyone's team is moving on, especially if your team is green and white. So first up, let's talk state politics a little bit. We finally have something to react to on a road funding plan. We've got actual bills that have been introduced. Speaker Hall has introduced his road funding plan. The package of bills were, I think, dropped last Wednesday, I think they went in. So Deena and Jimmy, feel free to jump in too. Tell me a little bit about that package of bills.
Yeah, so it's House Bills 4180 to 4187. And for local units of government, especially county roads, it's going to be, if it goes through, it would mean a significant influx of dollars into the county road system. So what the bills basically do is they allocate the gas tax, the tax that you pay at the gas pump, the sales tax, turn it into a gas tax, and then dedicate all of that revenue to the roads. So right now, when you go and you fill your car up with gas and you're paying sales tax, that sales tax goes to the state general fund. So what they're trying to do now is just say, okay, no, all of that revenue all the money that you pay in taxes, whatever form it is at the pump, is going to go toward fixing roads. And that money is going to go through that typical PA 51 road funding formula. So counties will get about $340 million of that revenue to go toward their roads. But in addition to that, they're also talking about taking general fund dollars and switching around some business taxes, finding some savings elsewhere, and then putting an additional $1.1 billion into the county road system, which is a huge windfall for, like I said, the county roads. There's like $880 million that would go to city roads out of that total pot of money. And then $220 million to MDOT out of that general fund dollars. So in total, it's like a $3 billion plan.
Yeah, so significant plan. Revenue neutral-ish is what we're calling this ish.
That's what they're calling it, revenue neutral, but it's really not revenue neutral. I mean, what's going to happen is in that plan that those sales tax dollars would no longer be going toward constitutional revenue sharing, which is not ours. But they're going to also backfill for the sales tax dollars that normally go to the school system. They're going to take that out of general fund. But then on how they're going to balance the books, they're like raising the Michigan business tax by like 30%, and then driving people who pay corporate income tax or pay Michigan business tax into the corporate income tax. So I don't know how it is really revenue neutral, because that's a significant increase in the Michigan business tax.
Right, they're moving from a lower tax to a higher tax, they being those businesses that are in there. And some are automatic phase out, so I think there is some dollars savings there because they're phasing out anyway, right? They're going to lose that credit. So those
mega credits, yeah, that's what they're the mega.
There are some that aren't due to sunset until 2030, so they would be motivated.
2030. We need to stay in this.
2030. So those that are due to phase out then would be motivated / forced to move over to this new taxing mechanism. But yeah, so that's where the fuzzy math is as far as new revenue versus revenue neutral.
Yeah, and I think for us, the only thing that might be concerned about is the hit that it's going to take to the state's general fund. And counties are reliant on a lot of general fund appropriations. So our revenue sharing, our you know, the court funding or what goes to public health departments. I mean, those aren't restricted revenues that fill that. Those are general fund revenues that fill those coffers. So we'll have to wait and see as we get, you know, down further in the process if the state's going to really be able to balance the budget, still maintain all of those priorities and do this huge influx into the roads.
Yeah, and this is, of course, the first step in the process too, right? So this is one chamber introducing their plan. It has to get out of that chamber, which you would suspect would have support from the Republican caucus to get it out. And then obviously in the Senate, you have a Dem caucus that's controlling that chamber, and whether that can get done there is to be determined.
Yeah, and the governor that we know the governor's got her plan. The governor has been met last week with Democratic legislators to talk to him about what her road funding plan is and fine tune it. We know she's having a bipartisan meeting this week to talk to, you know, Republicans and Democrats about what her road plan is. So, I mean, I would anticipate that this package of bills gets from the House over to the Senate. The Senate will probably drop their own version, send it over to the House, and then we'll kind of get to conference and talk about it. So hopefully, you know, it's still going to be a win for county roads.
Right, right.
At the end of the day.
Well, and so this discussion's starting. In the meantime, we still have a budget discussion going on, or somewhat going on. An interesting development last week with again in the House side of things, with what the House passed as far as a budget goes, kind of a slim down budget or an emergency budget or whatever we want to call it. Jimmy, you want to fill us in on that a little bit?
So, you know, what I'm hearing now, are we talking about the state or are we talking federal side here?
State.
So, you know, hearing on the state side, what I'm hearing is that this is pretty much the beginning part of negotiating between the House and the Senate. A lot of people are saying, hey, this is what some of the Republican priorities are going to be. They do want to see some money that's going to be cut back. As of right now, I'd say, you know, just wait and see how the negotiations go. Sounds like there's a lot of active conversation taking place. And so what was passed out of the House would be my guess isn't going to be the final product. There's still a lot of sausage to be made there yet.
Yeah, it was kind of, I think it was kind of a move by the House to sit there and say, okay, we don't want the discussion to be focused on what's not going to be funded potentially down the road if we pass that July 1st date. So let's take those things off the table, meaning schools, local government funding, which goes to, you know, police and public health and those sort of things. Mm-hmm. And so let's pass something that funds that. And obviously those weren't at a level even we were happy to see, right, Deena?
Yeah, no. Okay, so just for our membership, we'll back up because I think we're probably talking inside baseball. We haven't really explained it. So last week, the House Republicans substituted out a supplemental budget bill and said, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to fund essential services for fiscal year 26, which starts this coming October. Because we can already see the, you know, writing on the wall, the Senate and the House are not necessarily going to be on the same page when we may or may not get that budget done by September 30th. So we're going to fund essential services right now. In March, we're going to pass a budget bill that will go into effect October 1st for just those essential services. So we can avoid any kind of real government shutdown. Now, personally, I think it was, you know, quite a bit of theatrics because we're very early in the budget process. But what they put in that bill was funding for schools, revenue sharing, Department of Corrections, and like a couple of other things. And it just wasn't, it's definitely not what we want to see. Right. Absolutely not. Even for, you know, revenue sharing. Because what they did was they took away all that $30 million that we were getting in those taxable value payments for revenue sharing. That just starts this year. So in fiscal year 25, it's $30 million. They did not include that in their budget. And then they took the base revenue sharing amount, which we were getting $261 million of, and dropped that down to 256. So they gave us like a 1.9% haircut on the base revenue sharing and then didn't include the other 30 million. Like I said, I'm not horrifically worried about it because this is a long budget process and we know the Senate was not happy with what came over. And so I think it just is more setting the stage, doing the infighting before we get to actually down to work and figure out what the real budget is going to be.
Yeah, it was taking the essential stuff off the table so that no one can say or potentially say, hey, they didn't get a budget done. Well, there is a budget there to get done if people are willing to vote on it, right? And we'll
Right.
see if that ever comes up or if they're able to get a full budget done by
Well,
the ultimate date, which is, end of September.
right. But it's also, sort of, hey, House Republicans passed an essential services budget. Over to you. If there's a government shutdown and we can't agree, then it's your fault. So it's a
Right.
little bit more setting the stage for finger pointing.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And then also last week, many of us, and we had about 70-ish folks from Michigan out in Washington, D.C. at the National Association of Counties Conference. We, of course, were out there just helping our members get around Washington, and we did a bunch of visits. So what did we learn out at NACO, guys?
Well, first of all, I thought that it was just really fun meeting everybody that was there, just starting a few weeks ago, getting to meet all of our members, learning about what's going on in the different counties was really important, and I really enjoyed hearing from everybody. Towards the end of the week when we were there, we did go to Capitol Hill, and congressmen were very gracious to give us some of their time to go in and talk about some of these issues. In particular, we talked quite a bit about infrastructure. We talked about roads and what you see and what you don't see that is underneath those roads. Heard a lot of that, and they were very, very supportive with us. One thing that we're hearing right now is with the budget process that's taking place on the federal side is potential cuts to whether that's Medicaid or other social services. So we did bring that up, and as of right now, what we're hearing is that they're looking for fraud, waste, and abuse. As of right now, there's nothing official that's been out there, so they're telling us, hey guys, just watch what's going to be coming out. As of right now, again, they say that they're looking for fraud, waste, and abuse. So we're going to be watching closely and hoping that there's a positive outcome there. And again, Senator Peters as well was very gracious with his time with us as well. And one big thing that he touched on was the Selfridge Air Base and how important that is. And again, just very nice to have that time with them and for them to let some of our members, give them some questions and us to get some pretty thorough answers. So was really, really happy to be there.
Yeah, Deena, did you have anything to add to that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think I agree with Jimmy that it was a great conversation when we were up on Capitol Hill that, telling us to just, keep your powder dry on the potential cuts that are coming through. But, I mean, we heard that from the Republican members.
Mhm.
The Dem members that we met with were a little much more concerned about what these potential cuts would be and the likelihood of the cuts. So there's not necessarily an agreement, of course not, an agreement in Congress as to, the path forward. So just going to have to watch it closely.
Right, right. Well, in addition, we had, the announcement of Alicia Bell as running for second VP in NACO. So we have a Michigan representative running for second VP, and that'll be fun to watch as we move into their annual conference in July in Philadelphia and see how that plays out for her. And then finally, the last thing, just another plug on our conference, which is coming up April 7 through 9 here in Lansing. The governor has committed at this point to speak. We also have a great lineup of different pods, we're calling them. We're doing a little different setup for this conference where we're not going to have breakout sessions. Everyone's going to kind of stay together and see all the speakers as they present. So if you haven't registered, please go to our website, www.micounties.org. Register, and you can book your hotel and kind of see the conference lineup there. So with that, unless you guys have anything else.
No, I'm good.
All right. Then we will let everyone go and stay tuned for an update next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.